You ever notice how confidence sounds really smart, right up until someone actually checks the facts? Because today we're talking about those moments when American confidence runs headfirst into British reality. And somehow, without even trying, ends up proving that the UK education system might just be built different. And before anyone gets emotional in the comments, relax. This isn't about hating Americans. It's about those viral moments where people speak with full authority and absolutely zero understanding. The kind of moments that make Brits blink twice, sip their tea slowly, and quietly wonder how the education system across the pond works. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, please subscribe, like my video, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next update. It usually starts the same way, an American confidently explaining the UK to actual British people. History, geography, language, schooling. Nothing is off limits. And that confidence is impressive, honestly. But then the facts arrive, and suddenly, the confidence has nowhere to hide. Like when Americans insist that British schools are behind because students don't choose random electives at age 14, not realizing that UK students are already studying subject material Americans won't see until college. Or when someone genuinely believes that British students don't do math properly because they learn algebra, calculus, and physics earlier and more intensively. The irony is wild. One of the biggest giveaways is how Americans talk about exams. In the US, tests are constant, frequent, and often designed to boost grades. In the UK, exams are brutal, infrequent, and decisive. GCSEs and A-levels aren't cute little quizzes you can charm your way through. They decide your future paths. That's why British students don't spend years being told they're above average just for showing up. The system doesn't care about your confidence. It cares about whether you can actually do the work. And that difference alone explains so many of these awkward moments online. Then there's the classic misunderstanding of subject depth. Americans love saying, but UK students specialize too early. What they really mean is they're shocked that a 16-year-old in the UK can explain chemistry, literature, or mathematics at a level many Americans won't reach until university. In the US system, students spend years bouncing between subjects, often repeating the same material in different grades. In the UK, once you choose your subjects, you go deep. No padding, no busy work, just content. And when Americans mock that without realizing it, they accidentally expose how diluted their own system can be. Language is another battlefield where confidence goes to die. Americans correcting British spelling, Americans insisting British English is wrong. Americans shocked that the people who literally invented the language might understand it a bit better. British students study English literature with historical context, linguistic evolution, and brutal analysis. Shakespeare isn't a fun unit. It's a survival test. So when an American confidently explains what British people mean by certain words, only to be corrected by 5 Brits in the replies, it's not embarrassing because of nationality. It's embarrassing because education should teach humility before certainty. Geography might be the most painful example. The number of Americans who believe the UK is a single city, or that London is a country, or that Britain and England are interchangeable, is honestly impressive. British students learn world geography early, repeatedly, and seriously. Countries, borders, histories, it's standard knowledge. So when an American confidently explains where Scotland is to a Scottish person, or insists Ireland is part of the UK, the comments don't laugh because it's funny. They laugh because it reveals what happens when a system prioritizes confidence over correction. And then there's history. Oh boy. Americans explaining British history to the British is a genre of content at this point. From confidently misdating wars to simplifying centuries of monarchy into a single Disney-level summary. It's always said with such authority. Meanwhile, UK students study their history in uncomfortable detail: colonization, class conflict, empire, failure, and consequences. It's not heroic, it's critical. That difference matters because education isn't about feeling good about your country. It's about understanding it honestly. What really makes these moments go viral isn't ignorance alone. It's resistance to being corrected. British education drills one thing early. If you're wrong, you're wrong. Fix it and move on. American education often protects self-esteem first, accuracy second. So when Brits correct Americans online, many Americans double down instead of adjusting. And that reaction tells you everything. The system didn't train them to revise their understanding. It trained them to defend it. And this shows up clearly when Americans compare universities. They'll say things like, UK degrees are shorter, so they're easier, not realizing UK degrees are shorter because students already covered the basics years earlier. By the time a British student enters university, they're already specialized. No general education fluff, no repeating high school content, straight into advanced material. That's not easier, that's efficient. But efficiency looks suspicious if you're used to padding. The funniest part is that none of this is hidden. British students don't claim superiority loudly. They don't need to. The work speaks. The silence speaks. And when Americans try to mock the system without understanding it, they unintentionally highlight the gap. Not because Brits are smarter as people, but because the system demands more, earlier, and with fewer emotional safety nets. And look, this isn't saying the UK system is perfect. It's stressful, intense, and unforgiving. Plenty of Brits hate it while they're in it. But when you watch Americans confidently misunderstand basic UK education structures, you realize something important. Being loud isn't the same as being informed. Confidence isn't intelligence. And certainty, without knowledge, is just noise. That's why these moments resonate so much online. They're not about dunking on Americans. They're about watching a system built on reassurance collide with one built on rigor. And the result is awkward, funny, and occasionally painful to watch. So the next time you see an American confidently explaining British schools, exams, or culture to actual Brits, don't get mad. Just listen carefully. Because half the time, without even meaning to, they're proving exactly why the UK education system produces quieter confidence and louder results. And once you start noticing it, you can't unsee it. The pattern repeats everywhere. Interviews, podcasts, street videos, even classroom debates that somehow end up online. An American speaker enters with absolute certainty, confident posture, confident tone, confident conclusions. And then a Brit responds calmly, quietly, often politely, and completely dismantles the argument, using basic facts they learned years earlier in school. No shouting, no theatrics, just information. And that contrast alone tells you more about education than any ranking chart ever could. One moment that really exposes this gap is how problem-solving is approached. American education often teaches students what to think for the test. British education teaches students how to think under pressure. That's why British exams are infamous. Long-form answers, minimal guidance, no multiple-choice safety net. You either understand the material deeply or you don't. And when Americans encounter this style for the first time, the reaction is almost always the same. Shock. Not because it's unfair, but because it's unfamiliar. Another giveaway is how Americans talk about debate and opinions. In the US, confidence in your opinion is often treated as evidence of intelligence. In the UK, opinions without evidence get eaten alive. British students are trained early to expect pushback, contradiction, and criticism. You're not rewarded for sounding smart, you're rewarded for being precise. So when Americans argue emotionally and Brits respond analytically, the clash isn't cultural arrogance. It's educational conditioning. Even humor exposes it. British students are taught through sarcasm, understatement, and dry critique. That sharp humor isn't accidental. It comes from constant exposure to critical thinking. Americans sometimes mistake that for rudeness or insecurity, when really it's comfort with uncertainty. British education doesn't promise you that you're right. It prepares you for the possibility that you're wrong. And maybe the biggest difference of all is expectations. In the UK system, struggling doesn't get dressed up as excellence. You fail, you fix it, or you move on. There's less illusion, less cushioning. That pressure isn't always healthy, but it creates something unmistakable: realism. So when Americans confidently underestimate British education, they're often revealing how rarely their own system forced them to confront uncomfortable limits. This is why these moments keep going viral. Not because people love tearing others down, but because viewers instantly recognize the difference between confidence learned from encouragement and confidence earned through challenge. One sounds loud, the other sounds calm. So, if you're American watching this and feeling defensive, pause for a second. This isn't an attack on intelligence, it's a reflection on structure. And if you're British watching this and quietly nodding, that silence says more than any argument ever could. Because in the end, education doesn't show itself in how loudly you speak. It shows itself in how well you,